Okay, so yesterday we covered looking for companies and also how to research companies. Today we're covering resumes and cover letters, both very, very important. So the different sections we'll cover is what you're up against. So how HR is looking at your resume, how Taleo is looking at your resume, stuff like that. Who or what reads your resume, what you should put in your resume, so the contents, the wording, and the format, along with talking about the cover letter. And so for the cover letter, we're talking about how it should look, what you should include. I'll give you a bunch of examples from my own stuff. And then we'll cover, just do a little plug for Reddit, because they have a great forum, great subreddit for you guys who have resume trouble. So this is one of the key things for a lot of techies, is trying to write a cover letter or trying to do a resume. You guys, techies seem to have a little problem with that. Okay, so what are you up against? You're up against jobs that have hundreds of applicants, hundreds of resumes, and you are 1 out of 200, 1 out of 300. So you need to stand out. You're also up against overworked HR. So I know a lot of you work in networking, you work in IT, you're overworked, you've got meetings, you've got like 100 things to do, and you can't devote a lot of time to each task. Same thing for HR, and we'll talk about what's happening on the HR side. And another thing you're up against is most people have very little education in writing resumes. It's not a lot of high schools. I think probably no high school out there gives a class on writing a resume. Very few colleges give classes on writing a resume. So it's one of those very strange things. And then we expect you to go out and get a job. So it's very, very strange to me. So this is an infographic put out by Be Hiring, and it has a couple stats. Now I don't know how accurate they are, but a couple of these things, it kind of makes sense. I've asked other people like how much time is spent looking at a resume, and it's about 10 seconds. So that's kind of the time you have to make an impression. The first one is pretty accurate. I didn't realize it was actually 200 seconds after a job is posted that you start getting applications, but I guess it kind of makes sense if you get all those applicants, and chances that your cover letter will be read, stuff like that. On average, 250 resumes are received for each job. So it's pretty crazy odds that you have here. This one in the bottom left is interesting. 88% job rejection rate if you have a photo of yourself. So it works a little different in Asia. In Asia, a lot of jobs require a photo. And in fact, here in Thailand, you can actually job discriminate. And what I mean by that is you can actually specify in the job ad, I want a female under 30 years old. And it's okay to do that, and you must send a photo. Of course, in the US, the reason that you get the job rejection, they just won't look at it, is they don't want to be accused of any type of job discrimination or anything like that. So you put the picture in there, it's just killed. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, who or what reads your resume? There's 4 main groups out there. Of course, there's HR that reads your resume. There's Taleo, which I call the T1000. That thing reads your resume. You've got the real employees and the CEOs. So I kind of split those off, but they're pretty much one and the same. Your goal here is to get your resume past HR. You don't want HR to see it first. You don't want Taleo to see it first. You want a real employee, you want the CEO, head honchos, you want those guys to see it first, and then give it to HR. So speaking of HR, we've got, we want to think like HR. We want to know what makes them tick. So here's the problem. They've got dozens of jobs they need to fill. They've got hundreds of people applying for each job. And I know if you're in tech, how many of you have meetings that you have to go to as part of your job? So you have the tech work, but you also have meetings with management and stuff like that. Yep. So you got meetings. So you're supposed to work, let's say 8 hours if you're salary. You've got 1 to 2 hours of meetings. That leaves 6 hours. Take off an hour for lunch. Doesn't leave a lot of time to do stuff. So it's much worse for HR. They have even more meetings each day. In addition, they're putting out HR fires. So discrimination lawsuits, guys not getting promoted. There's a lot of stuff you don't see in the background. So on top of all of that, they've got to screen and interview candidates. So think of how much time they get to spend with each resume. And that brings us to the Taleo thing a little bit later. So the different resume paths, the ideal one is your resume hits the employee, then hits HR. That's what you want. Another resume path is you get it to HR. HR likes it enough to send it to a real employee. They basically say, hey, this may be good. What do you think? And then the crappy ones are Taleo, T1000 to HR to a real employee. That's okay. It reached a real employee. It's not exactly the optimal path. There's the T1000 to HR. That's not too good. And then there's the one where the T1000 just killed it. Like you didn't hit the keywords or whatever. So you must bypass HR for the first step. That's why using LinkedIn is very important. You need to find a guy on the inside. So let's understand the T1000 a little bit when it comes to resume. If you didn't know, Taleo is owned by Oracle, which means it's arm and a leg. It costs you insanely, it costs the company a lot of money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Implementation is also hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what you've got here is, so you got to open mic. There you go. Okay, so because the company spent a lot of money, doesn't matter what you complain. It doesn't matter that you say that the user interface sucks. The company's going to use it. It's because they paid for it. Large companies, they don't care about usability. They don't care about your complaints because large popular companies, let's say like Microsoft, they always have applicants, no matter what. You can make the crappiest user interface. If you're a large company, people will apply anyways. So going back to this HR, remember that we talked about that HR's got hundreds of people applying for each job, right? And they have dozens of jobs that they have to fill. So the big thing for Taleo is it will rank all the applicants, and you can say, if you're an HR person, you can say, give me the top 5, give me the top 10. So even though Taleo sucks, they know Taleo sucks, it saves them a lot of time. Now, how we view Taleo is this. This is just a simple search on Reddit for what people think of Taleo. You can see the comments there. Taleo sucks. It's a piece of junk. Should I even bother applying? Taleo's just mocking me. No luck with Taleo. So this is how we think about Taleo, and I think there's a lot of truth to this. Taleo's a black hole, pretty much. So this is how HR looks at Taleo, right? So they know it's a piece of crap, but at the end of the day, it's better. It gives them more benefit than it does disadvantage. Right? And this one at the bottom is probably the most informative post. Do you think one person can review 200 resumes? It's impossible. Not with the meetings, not with putting out the other HR fires. You just can't do it. So that's why they have applicant tracking systems. All right, so how do you beat the T1000? Your resume, you need to have a text format version of your resume. That's probably the most important. A lot of you guys have a Word doc. You should have a PDF format. Sometimes if you paste in the PDF, Taleo will bomb out and look at it as a picture. So you definitely don't want that. The cool thing about Taleo is you can have a 5-page resume. Taleo don't care. So the whole thing with having a 1 or 2 page resume goes out the window. Taleo is just happy with a long resume. You need to format the employer before the date. So a lot of you guys have your resume as date, then employer. You don't want to do that with Taleo because it will get confused. It's dumb. And don't get cute with work experience. Some people say jobs. Jobs should work, but Taleo's looking for the word work experience. So you don't want it miscategorized. Some people don't have anything, like it's just a line break, a solid line, and sometimes Taleo just ignores that section. Keywords from the job posting. What you're looking for is, in the job posting, there's going to be like required experience, required skills, and you should look at that very carefully and craft your resume to hit those words. And I'll give you a little example later. Actually, it's right here. So let's say this is for a sysadmin job because you see things like Chef. Chef is actually really cool to play with. You see a large-scale Linux environment, excellent software troubleshooting experience. So in your resume, you would have something, you would obviously have the word Chef in there, assuming that you did work with Chef, right? So you can say if you automated your entire Cisco network with a Chef, okay, definitely put that. The large-scale Linux environment. So you would have something like, let's say you did like 2 years of Red Hat. So definitely put Red Hat Linux to hit that keyword. Excellent software troubleshooting. You use debuggers and I don't know, whatever other software troubleshooting stuff that they have out there. Perl, Python, stuff like that. So these are the words that they're looking for. If they're using Taleo, the HR guy has written, not a script, but it's like they've customized Taleo to look for this stuff. And keep your resume clean. What I mean by that is you need to keep it visually clean so that Taleo doesn't bomb out. So the font size, no tables, no graphics, get that stuff out, no special characters, no header, no footer, and plenty of white space. Don't cram in a lot of text in a small space because Taleo will bomb out. And I've seen it happen. Panda Restaurant Group uses Taleo, and when I was filling out my application, it was a formality because my friend recruited me. They said, okay, you're hired, just fill out Taleo because everyone has to do it. It bombed out on me after like 40 minutes of stuff, and I had to restart it. Also, it's very picky on browsers. So you use the wrong browser, it bombs out. Also, like certain tables sometimes don't work, so a button wasn't clicking. So it's a horrible experience. Okay, so now that you know what you're up against, how should you write your resume? It's actually very simple. Companies are looking for 3 things: where you worked, what you did, and when you did it. And that's pretty much it. There's other stuff we'll add in later, but those are the 3 things that they're looking for. And so when a recruiter reads your resume, a recruiter or HR person, this is the same thing: where you worked, what you did, right? That's it. Because they don't have time to do a deep dive. Remember, we've got 200 resumes to read, so HR is going to just keep it very quick. Education. I always put education last. The reason is you can look it up. Google's Eric Schmidt said something like, if you've been in the workplace for 5 years, your education matters very little because now it's what you did and your projects and stuff like that. It becomes less of a factor in your hiring as you continue working. If you've been in the job market 10 years, 20 years, yeah, definitely put it last. Unless you're a recent grad, if you don't have any job experience, education is kind of the only thing you can put. So that's going to be near the top, especially if you went to a good school. If you're like a Stanford grad, Caltech, MIT, then that will get more priority. Have a link to your online resume, LinkedIn. If you're a member of LinkedIn, you should be. Get a customized URL, and I'll show you how that looks a little bit later. This is something I don't do, but a lot of people recommend, is you have the summary at top. So the summary is different than the objective. The objective, a lot of you old-timers may remember this from a resume, is I'm looking for a job in this. It's like, duh, of course you're looking for a job. We don't care. So the objective is kind of passé. You don't want to have that in there. The summary is good for some people. I don't do this because I generally do it in the cover letter. But for most people, a summary, 1 paragraph, 100 words is good. When you put your company, put a description. I'll show you how that looks a little bit later in about a minute or two. And then you don't need complete sentences. Don't do I did this, I did that. It's your resume. It's understood that you're talking about yourself. Accomplishments. When you're listing the stuff that you did for each company, you're generally listing about 3 to 4 things that you did, 3 to 4 major projects that you completed. So upgraded the network, upgraded the wireless, changed out all the firewalls at all the stores, stuff like that. Don't end with a whimper. So what I mean by that is, I gave you an example right here. It's like, okay, imagine yourself as HR reading this, right? So put yourself in the HR shoes. So this guy configured to upgrade all the HQ network devices. Cool, thumbs up. Upgraded the HQ wireless network. Wow, that's pretty cool. Designed a fault-tolerant network. Cool. And then you threw in there as number 4, rotated backup tapes. And that just, so the way people think here, the HR person thinks that this guy's lazy. You gave up on number 4. So it would have been more powerful here just to leave it out. Just have the first 3. Right? So don't leave with a whimper. You also see this with skills. I've seen this before. So CCNP, good. Right? CCNP, Red Hat, certification, good. They've got the Juniper, the first level one, JNCA, I think it's called. Good, right? So 3 really cool things. And then number 4, Microsoft Word. So, to me, just leave the Microsoft Word out. It just shows that you got lazy when you were writing everything. Any questions about anything we covered up to now, especially with the accomplishments? I'll give you examples on the next couple slides, but just want to make sure you guys are getting this. Certs. I've got a slide on that. I thought ahead. Yes, you will get, we're going to see it in 30 seconds. Cool, looks like I anticipated the questions very well. Okay, certifications, you were asking about that. So, it's a matter of style. There's no, if you want to put the certs after your name, That's okay. I personally don't put the certs after my name just because I have a lot and it would go on a little bit. But one thing I will say is if you've got a master's degree, if you've got some type of high level degree beyond bachelor's, it looks a little weird when you put MBA, comma, CCNA. To me, it looks weird. I've talked to HR about it, and it's kind of half and half, so it's very situational. But if it's a high-level cert, if it's CCIE you're going to put behind your name. CISSP, you're going to put behind your name. Red Hat, you're going to put behind your name. So there are certain high-level ones that, of course, you're going to do it. But if you mix up like a MBA, comma, A+, like, dude, just looks weird to me. If you have a lot of certs, like some people, make a separate certification sheet. And of course, keep that up to date. And I'll show you how that looks like. The Holy War one. How many of you have seen people put on the resume CCNA in progress or CCNP in progress or working on my CCNP? How many of you have seen that? So the reason this is a holy war topic is if you ask people about it, people are kind of split 50-50 on this. One half of the camp is they basically think, well, he's improving himself. He or she is improving himself. They're going for a better cert. Why not? Why not put in progress? The other half of the camp basically thinks that it's being dishonest. They think that you either have the cert or you don't. That's kind of how they think. And they also think that you're putting in progress, CCNA in progress, because you're just trying to hit the keyword, right, to get it past Taleo or whatever. They think it's a little sneaky. So I personally am leaning towards it's not acceptable. But there are some cases that it will work, that I think it's okay. So first case, any cert with multiple exams. So CCNP has got 3 exams, right? If you've passed 2 of them. So I would say it would be completely cool to put, okay, I've got CCNA, I'm working on CCNP, and I've passed 2 out of 3. That's okay to me. If you're working on CCIE and you've passed the written, and maybe you've attempted the lab once, I think that's okay. Attempted the lab, did the written, that's fine. If you're doing A+ and you've passed the first exam, that's okay. So stuff like that. If you have an exam date, put it down on your resume. Because if you get the interview, they're going to ask, when's the exam? So you put that the CCNA's in progress, you've passed the first half, when's the next half? Oh, I don't have it scheduled. That looks bad, right? So have an exam date. Cases where it's definitely not acceptable. So don't do this. If the job specifies you must have a CCNP, like must, right? And then you put CCNP in progress, most HR and recruiter guys will just kill your resume right there because you tried to be sneaky. Remember, they're looking at 200 resumes. You try to sneak this one in, and no, it's not going to work. So in that sense, no. But if it's something like we would like CCNP, then if you're close, I think it's okay. So that's the certification part. Okay, so Mike has a question. What about working on CCIE? I think I talked about that. If you've passed the CCIE written, and I would say it's also attempted the lab once, and you have your second lab scheduled, that's fine. To me, it's cool. if you just say I'm working on CCIE written, a lot of people are working on CCIE written. A lot of people have had that CCIE book on their desk for years and they've never opened it. So, you know, if you interview with a CCIE and you say you're working on CCIE and you don't have anything scheduled, you will get skewered. It's not going to be a good day for you. But if you're interviewing with a CCIE, you know, the guy's actually has a number, and you've passed the lab and you've done or you've passed the written and you've done the lab once or twice, completely cool to say you're going for CCIE. You could put your lab dates, you could do all that stuff. Okay, so you see my name at top, you see the address, the email address, all that. You don't need to put email address is this. Everyone knows that's a freaking email address. You don't need to put phone number is this. Everyone knows that's a phone number. We don't need the full street, no one cares. And notice the LinkedIn, the personal URL, everyone should get that. Just get a LinkedIn URL. Because the normal one you get is crap. It's like a whole bunch of numbers, so you know, you don't want that. So as far as work experience, you can see how I did it. It's the name of the company, where it is, and the time. Very simple. And then you must give a description of what that company does. So Panda Restaurant Group, some people may not know it's the parent company of Panda Express. They may not know that Orange Chicken makes like $3 billion a year. So, and they may not know that Panda has 1,700 restaurants. So why city and state? The reason is, if the company you're working for or you want to work for is in the same city, you can say like, hey, it's the same city. I'm not, I've been commuting to Rosemead forever for 3 years. This other company is also in Rosemead, not a big deal. So I always put, the city. Then it's going to be your position, network engineer, technical analyst, whatever, and then bullet points on what you did. And you try to be here as specific as possible. So how many routers, what type of switches, where it was, stuff like that. So you can see that I've got multiple spacing from different jobs. So between network engineer at Panda and Escolta, we've got like 4 white, it's either triple space or quadruple space, just some white space to kind of guide the eyes of the recruiter. And even though it kind of doesn't fit, so I'm generally looking for IT stuff, right? And then you may have noticed kind of third way down, it's the Warzone stuff. I leave that in there. That hasn't killed me from any job. That's actually gotten me points and stuff like that. It's actually has been a very positive thing. It's just like, whoa, what's this? And that's common question in the interviews. Can you deal with stress? Well, I did this, right? Second page, continuing on with the jobs, it's multinational hosting provider, that type of stuff. I leave the Tom's Hardware Guide in at the bottom, generally because a lot of companies, they're looking for people who can also write, who have a good presence. And of course, at Tom's Hardware, you write a lot. So, even as a techie, companies are looking for that because you may have to do like a budget proposal. You may have to do a wireless audit, stuff like that. Any questions about how the job portion looks like? So the table here at the bottom, remember this is my master copy. If I were doing this for Taleo, I would kill the table. If it's a human reading it, table is fine. And the one thing I could have done a little bit better on in the table, you'll notice that there's this huge YouTube link. I probably could have shorten that up. Yeah, so Abram says you only go back to 2008. I only need to go back to 2008. And I'll show you, you're going to see in the next page why. All right, so if I'm applying for a network engineer job, this is all I need. So what if you have other jobs? There's two ways of doing this. Here's what I did. Job history continued. So I've worked at a lot of places, right? So I just throw those in there. I don't need like detailed stuff. These really don't matter too much, but it just shows that, okay, he's been around. Now, depending on the job, I may just leave this off. They may not need to see it. Some of these companies aren't even around anymore, so that's why as well. And then we have the miscellaneous stuff, like other education accomplishments, hobbies, and stuff like that. There are certain hobbies that work, certain volunteer stuff that work. Pilot is a good one. If you're going for a pilot, if you are a pilot, always, always, always list that somewhere on your resume. The reason is, if your interviewer is a pilot, instant rapport, you can talk for hours about planes. If the interviewer wants to become a pilot, you will talk for hours about planes. It's been several times where an HR person wanted to take flying lessons. Hey, I'm a ground instructor. We talked for almost an hour about that, so it's all good. The highway patrol stuff, that's usually been a positive. Unless you interview with someone who hates cops, then it might not work too well. And then here's how a certification sheet looks like. You've got the certs, you've got the numbers, the Cisco number there, expiration date. CCNP's coming up. I should probably look into that. VMware, Cisco sales, even though they're expired, if I'm applying for a vendor or a VAR, they know that, okay, he's done the sales stuff before, he can do it again. CompTIA, I need to indent that INET Plus, but who cares about that one? And then other certs from way back. For training jobs, the one at the bottom is a cert for instructors for secondary education. Even though that's expired a long time ago, I still put that there because it shows that I got it before. Okay, the power of vocabulary. So we know what to write. How should you write it? So you want to use certain words. If you just said like, I attended meetings, no duh, of course you attended meetings. I participated in a network migration. Wow, that's that's boring, right? So if you led, if you organized it, if you created, if you hosted, if you were like the primary member of a network upgrade, use those type of words. Stuff to leave out. I did this, we did that. Pronouns, I, we, that type of stuff. Don't need it, don't care, because the resume, you don't need to have complete sentences on your resume. You don't need to do third person. Incomplete sentences is fine. Completed network upgrade. Upgraded wireless routers or wireless access points, stuff like that. You want to leave out the, I call them bullshit words, efficiently upgraded, extensively upgraded. It's like, how? What does that mean? Concrete example. So instead of saying extensively or efficiently, those type of BS words, you want to use numbers and specs. So vague would be, I configured the wireless network. Wow. What does that mean? What kind of wireless access point? When did you do it? So better would be, I upgraded the Cisco 5008 wireless LAN controller, 25 Cisco LWAPs. I did daily wireless rogue scans. I removed threats. I completed a 24-page wireless audit site survey. That is being specific. So concrete examples. So don't say I managed a server farm. No one, managed a server farm. What does that mean? How many servers, right? What kind of servers? So you say managed a server farm of 50 Dell PowerEdge something servers with a NetApp storage backend, fiber channel, blah, 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 blah. References. This is a big one. I see this mistake a lot. I see a lot of times references upon request. Big deal. Of course, you're going to give us references if we ask. So this is redundant. You need to leave out references upon request. No one cares. And a lot of times, even if you put references, just HR doesn't have time to follow up. They're just overworked. They're not going to bother calling people. Very seldom. The only exception is if you have a big name reference. If you can honestly say Bill Clinton will vouch for you, then hey, put that down. I mean, hey, if you got that guy in your back pocket, then go ahead. But that's kind of the only exception. Okay, the miscellaneous section, kind of the thing that I had at the bottom of mine. A lot of people say hobbies shouldn't be put in there. I disagree. A lot of people disagree. And the reason is, if you're good at a hobby, if you're good at something, companies will basically say, okay, if he's good at one thing, he has the potential to be good in other things. So this is why Olympians, people who go to the Olympics, win gold medals, they get jobs in basically anything, because if you're number one in your field in one thing, you can be number one in sales. You can be number one in whatever. You have the potential to do that. So there's certain relevant hobbies that can work. As I said, pilot's license, numero uno. Pilot's license is, now, don't plunk down the $12,000 to get the pilot's license just because you think it's going to be good on your resume. No, don't do that. But if you have it, if you're going to do it anyways, I'm just letting you know that is a primo thing to have. Law enforcement volunteer work, hospital volunteer work, that type of stuff. The one that gives like last wishes for kids and stuff like that, that's good. Travel, if you travel a lot, put that on. That's good. If you've traveled to if you've traveled to like 5 continents or whatever, Africa, Australia, Europe, stuff like that, that's good. You will be asked about it on your interview. And awards. So if your hobby is you like to play the Rubik's Cube, no, I wouldn't put that down on your resume. But if you're US champion, if you're state champion, Rubik's Cube, I would be cool with that. That's like, okay, he's number one in something. If you play chess, I probably wouldn't put down that you play chess. But if you're a master, grandmaster, something like that, I would be cool with that. That would be fine. I don't know how you would be a grandmaster and still have time for IT, but that's another story. Any questions about the miscellaneous section or the references? Not at this time. So the question is, are you still actively trying to get CCIE certified? Not right now, because I'm doing the boot camp. I'm doing a video project. If some of you were observant, you saw that at the beginning I had all the slides, so you can see all the slides made up for that video project. So that's taken up a lot of time. So CCIE is on the back burner for me. Okay, so you've written your resume. Where do you put it? Man, put it on cloud. Just I see so many people put it on their laptop, put it on their desktop. and they lose it, it gets stolen or whatever. It's horrible. So have a Dropbox, have OneDrive, have Google Drive. Make a link to that resume. And my trick is I always have a draft email in Gmail with the resume already attached, the updated resume. That way, if I need to send it out, bam, I can just fill in the name and it shoots out. Resume formats, Google Docs. I keep the master copy in Google Docs, and then I save 3 versions, always 3 versions. PDF version, text version if I want to do the T1000, and a doc for Microsoft Word, not the docx. Don't do docx, do doc. And if you want, you can nuke the metadata if you're feeling paranoid. So if you create your PDF with like Adobe Acrobat, you know that it's got the PDF in there, the metadata, there's a checkbox or there's a menu you could go to scrub that out. So Abram says, I put a resume on a business card linked to an online resume. Yeah, that's good. I've seen that quite a bit. Okay, the massage technique. This is very underhanded. I wouldn't, if you're stuck writing your resume for a particular company, you're like, I want to apply for this company, but I don't really know what to write. So here's what you do. You put an ad in Craigslist for a very similar job, just change the company name. Use Craigslist because it'll probably be free or very cheap. Advertise the same position, look at all the resumes that come in, and that will give you an idea. I've done it a couple times. It's sneaky, but you know, it works. That's why I say it's a massage technique. It's optional. Okay, cover letters. Very important, very, very important. I know a lot of you have problems writing a cover letter, and the reason is, as techies, we tend not to show off in the terms of, my show off is basically configuring a router and how fast it is. Telling people that I'm awesome just sometimes feels wrong. So it's the digital version of your elevator pitch. Elevator pitch, if you don't know what it is, it's 30-second to 60-second summary of who you are, of what you do, what you're good at, what interests you, stuff like that. Your resume is very impersonal. It's very robotic. It's like, okay, here's what I did. Your cover letter is what makes you a real person, adds humanity. And if you're going for like a customer facing or management type job, your cover letter is primo. You need to have it. Actually, a lot of recruiters and HR people, if you don't have a cover letter, they kill the whole thing. They kill the whole package. So it's very necessary in some instances, in most instances. You're going to match the style of the cover letter with the job ad, with the company. So I'll give you examples a little bit later, but DreamHost is a very quirky company. If you read their job ads, if you read their blogs, they're utterly nuts. They actually won the best corporate blog several years running. So they're very funny. So I matched my cover letter with that culture. If the company is very serious, your cover letter is probably going to be on the more serious side. And another thing you're trying to do is anticipate questions that they may have in your cover letter. So one time, I was applying for a job in Irvine. And I anticipated the question would be, you live in Redlands. You live far away. Right? This would probably come up. So how do I head that question off at the pass? Yes, I've worked in Irvine before. I've done the commute. Not a problem. Stuff like that. So this is how your average HR person looks at a cover letter. They rely on it as much or more than a resume, right? It gives you, it sees if you're a team player, sees if you can write. And this is a good analogy at the end here. Your resume is like the engine, but the cover letter is like everything else around the engine, the body, the wheel, the seats, that type of stuff. Okay, so that's how an HR person thinks. Good cover letters will make you much more memorable. If it's a really awesome cover letter, it will be resent to other employees. Your cover letter and resume will go everywhere. And it's a great icebreaker as well for interviews. And on one of these, I got sent back this. I met some guys at Scale, which is a Linux, free Linux, not free, but it's a Linux conference in Southern California, LA. Met some guys, talked to them about the job, stuff like that. And sent one of the HR people my cover letter and resume. And yeah, it worked out well. They liked a couple videos. One of them told me later that they went through like my entire channel just watching videos. So, and yes, they did misspell that. They said you channel instead of your channel. But that's okay. Oops. All right. So contents of the cover letter, what are you going to put in there? Customize for each position. You're going to basically look at all the job requirements and you're going to try to hit them. And basically 4 sections. How you found out about the position. So if you talk to someone at a job fair, you would put in the first paragraph, I talked with John Doe at the Caltech job fair. If you talk with a person who works at the company, I talked with Mike Smith. He's a network engineer at your company. He referred me to this job that may be open, something like that. In the second paragraph, second and third paragraphs, if you want, your accomplishments that fit the job description. So something like, you asked for this, I did this. You want to put in there, what do you know about the company? So if you were applying for SpaceX, what would you figure out on your research? So one thing you should know about SpaceX is if you work for them as a full-timer, those are 60-hour weeks minimum. They tell you that up front. You don't work for SpaceX and do 40-hour weeks. It doesn't happen. So you would say, I realize that SpaceX is a very demanding environment, requires a lot of hours, but given what you're trying to accomplish by going to Mars and doing reusable rockets, I am completely cool with working those types of hours. Something like that. Tells the recruiter, the HR guy that, hey, he researched us. And why do you want to work for them? SpaceX, you're sending people to Mars. Hey, that's cool. VMware, you're doing a push for NSX, something like that. For the accomplishments, you want to be specific, not too specific, because that's meant for the resume. So as an example, I just pulled this out from a job ad. We're looking for a guy who has the capability and experience to lead large projects independently, as well as participate in other projects. So what would you say? As an example, you could say at X. At Boeing, I took over a multi-million-dollar, multi-year network upgrade project. So you're hitting that first one, the large project. I did the budgeting, the design, the implementation, disaster recovery site, blah, 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 blah. And the participating one is, you could say, I was one of 4 engineers on a nationwide overhaul, something like that. Assuming that's what you actually did, right? That's kind of how you would write it. Okay, you want examples? I'll give you examples. I'll give you three right here. Company L and Company L2. The first one, I was hired by them but didn't take it. The second one, interviewed twice, so it got me ahead. And Company A, I was hired. So, and the style for all three are very different because I'm customizing it for the company. So the first, Company L, that's the cover letter. It's not that funny, but I gauged that this company was a competitor to DreamHost. So the thing where I talked about yesterday, where you interview with the competitor, and that was to get intel, and quirky enough, they offered me a job. So I don't know, it actually, when you don't care about getting the job, it seems you do very well on the interviews. So I told them like BGP, how many servers, I did the DMC takedowns, I'm the trainer, the YouTube stuff. So this is like my one paragraph to shine, right? So I'm trying to be a little bit specific, but not too much. But here, I put in the BGP ASNs because I knew that this company was also running BGP, so I wanted to make sure they knew that I could hang with that protocol. And here's the offer letter. So the salary was a little low, but I wasn't going to take it anyways. But it's kind of interesting that it worked. Okay, second, Company L. You can probably figure out who it is. I'll just say LinkedIn is it's a growing company. It's in Silicon Valley, so it's more hipster. So I definitely kind of tweaked my cover letter for that. It's like, hey, you're looking for a network engineer? I'm the dude. Kept the language, because this was going to an HR person, kept the language a little bit less technical and more like rah, rah, rah. I want to work for LinkedIn because LinkedIn is cool, right? So you notice on the first paragraph, the last sentence, I want to work on a network that serves millions of job seekers. So that tells them that I know a little bit about LinkedIn. And what's cool for this one is they had like this whole list of things that they were looking for. It was huge. And so rather than put it like bullet format on the cover letter, on the resume, what I did is I did a Google Docs, I did a spreadsheet, I did this whole matrix thing. And if I hit the requirement, I highlighted it in green. I filled in the box green. If I didn't hit it quite correct, I put it in yellow. And I was very honest in those things. And if I didn't hit it at all, I put a red. And she liked it. She was like, dude, this is awesome. I wish more people would do this. Because then she doesn't have to guess. Also notice at the bottom, I anticipated that if she cannot get to Google Docs, which is possible, if Google Docs bombs out on her, here's the PDF version. So always anticipate that. And then Company A, where I got hired at, a very serious company. They're not funny at all. So a very serious training company. So this cover letter is very serious. It's, I would like to apply, I can do this, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and to prove that I've got good reviews that I can teach. Some of the reviews from people in routergods, right? So I pasted that in there. So basically proving to that guy that I'm awesome. You have to, and that's your cover letter. You have to prove that you're awesome. Wow, that was a while ago. Look at that. We've met 125 times. So that can show you how old this one was. Any questions on the cover letter examples? And if you can't tell, I love writing cover letters. They don't make me nervous at all. They actually, it's like, oh, cover letter time. This is cool. Let's see what I can do. Is it mandatory? Yes. There are a lot of HR people that will kill your resume, kill the whole thing if they don't see a cover letter. They will assume, a lot of them will just assume that you can't write if you don't have a cover letter. Any other questions? Okay, Jonathan says, is there a deadline of accomplishments? For example, I won district championship for woodshop in high school 10 years ago. Yeah, that might be, that's a little long ago, but I would search on LinkedIn, and if the guy's like, so this is where like research counts. If the guy who's going to interview you was just happened to be a carpenter, then I would put that down. You know, if not, probably I would leave that out. So Dan says, I hate it when they offer very little compensation but ask for extremely high certs. Yeah, but you know, when they do the job offer, that first salary they offer, there's always another number. Never take the first salary number, ever. All right. And, oh, okay, cool. So the Reddit plug, if you're looking for examples of resumes, if you're looking for free advice, we have our Slacker channel, that's good. But also, if you go on Reddit, if you don't know what Reddit is, it's the most helpful, but also the most obnoxious community on the internet. It's got millions of people. You ask a question, in less than a minute, you'll probably get answers. I don't know if it's the answers you'll like, but you'll get answers. And the one that's most pertinent in this case is they have /r/resumes. The /r means it's a subreddit. It's basically a sub-channel of Reddit. And in this one is people, a lot of times they post their resumes, they ask for hints and tips and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a very, very good resource to have. And you can post your resume, just kill the details a little bit, but you can post your resume and say, hey guys, I'm applying for that network job. Am I using too many words in this resume? Can I change it up to make it sound a little bit better? You know, stuff like that. Of course, you're always welcome to post in our email list or our Slacker channel links to your resume and for help. I've done it several times for people that I know. One guy got a job at WebSense, so we did this whole like retooling of his resume. It took a while, but man, it looked completely different from point A to point B, and he got the job at WebSense, so it worked. Right? So I've done it a couple times. And also, I've gone to bat for people in recommendations. So, you know, if you attend Meetup a lot and I know you, I'm willing to do the recommendation. But don't put me down as a recommendation if you go to Meetups, but I have no idea who you are, because some people just lurk in the background. Okay, Jonathan asks, what if it's your first network job? Okay, so if you're applying for your first network job, the interviewer and the HR person has to be comfortable in knowing that you have the potential to learn. You don't have enough history behind you to prove that for sure you can hack the job. So, you know, I've been working as a network engineer for years. They're going to look at my resume and go, okay, of course, he can handle himself. But you've never worked in networking before. How do you how do you show that you have the potential to do that? This is where having the home lab is important. Hell, put down on your resume, you got your CCNA with a home lab. You bought 3 routers, 2 switches, whatever, and you connected them together. That's going to be probably one of the most important things that you could do. Because if you did CCNA just with packet tracer, it's not going to work too well for you, in the job interview. Because, multi-million-dollar company, real routers and switches, they're not going to take the chance on that. So Abram asks, run your resume and their requirements against you in a word cloud as a test of importance. Yes. So if you guys don't know what a word cloud is, you can just Google word cloud, but it picks up the keywords in a job posting. And if the word appears more often, it's in bold, and words that don't appear as often are smaller. So you want to kind of compare the two and see how well they match up. Yes, and that's part of the customizing the resume for each company. Okay, a couple more questions. I can take about 2 or 3 more. And if you want me to scroll back to a particular section, I can. It's quite easy. Okay, we'll take Jonathan's. So Mark asks, will the PowerPoint be available offline? The recording will be available. This is not PowerPoint, this is called Prezi. So we'll have to figure that one out. Jonathan asks, I think that's what got me hired. I started yesterday, so that's cool. I did a home lab, but I didn't contest the first offer of is that $15 per hour? What do you think the starting salary should have been? Well, depends on what's the title of the job. And the location. $15 an hour for Brea? That's a little low, but I mean, it's your first job, so you can't really ask for much. So it is a little low, but you have no real room for negotiation. So. Is it DreamHost? Okay, no problem. Okay, Juan has something. Okay, yeah, so I remember. Been away for 6 years, only professional IT job was right after college. Should I put in the resume that it was 6 years ago, was there for 7 months and in Mexico? Should I put personal work experience like assembling, selling computers? Yes, you should absolutely put assembling, selling computers. You must, you were selling it, so it kind of sounds like a job to me, kind of like a side job. I would put that as that under work experience. Because I tell you, a lot of network people out there don't know crap about personal PCs. It's my personal, I'm an old timer, so my personal opinion is everyone should start with A+ first. You should learn about how to use a computer before you use a router. A router is basically a special computer. But I'm an old timer. But yes, absolutely put selling, assembling computers as work experience. It's not a hobby. If you're selling the things, that's not a hobby. You're doing it as a kind of like your own job. How to cover gaps in work history. Depends on what you did in that gap. So you could either leave the gap, You could do consulting work in between. So what I do is I travel. So I explain that away in my travel section, or I explain it away in my cover letter. So what I do is I try to head it off at the pass in the cover letter. Say, you may have noticed in my resume that I have gaps from here to here. Just to let you know, I spent that time in Tokyo, Thailand, Africa, blah, 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 all this stuff. 12-year gap, that's rough. You're going to have to, I don't know of any good way of saying 12-year gap. Even with IT, a 1-year gap in IT is pretty rough. So you could say you went back to school or something like that if that's what you did. Caregiver, yeah, that's one of those things where you got to do it. So I think caregiver would be okay. So Dan has a question. In the cover letter, should I put that my goal is getting CCIE? Yes, if your interviewer is a CCIE. If your interviewer is a CCIE, you should absolutely put that your goal is getting CCIE. And you should be prepared to answer what steps have you taken. I bought the book, I bought the lab, I purchased INE, I purchased NARBIC, I have my written scheduled. You need to be concrete. If you put on your cover letter that my goal is getting CCIE, and you go to the interview and they ask you that type of stuff, and you say, well, I bought the book, that's going to be crash and burn for you. So if the interviewer is a CCIE, by all means, put that down. If they're not, that's a judgment call. Now, another case where you must put that you're going for a CCIE is if you're going to work for any VAR, vendor, gold partner, Cisco partner, CDW, Worldwide Tech, contracting agency, temp agency, then yes, because you're going to be more valuable as a CCIE. So in that sense, know the interviewer and know the company, and that will tell you if you put the CCIE thing down. Aris has a question. What's the assessment of contracting? We have a whole meetup about contracting. The recording is on the YouTube channel. Thumbs up on contracting. I love contracting. It's awesome. It's the best way to learn. Short contracting gigs, learn the most in 6 months and you're gone. You're out of the politics for the most part. You get paid more. You get to do more of the job of networking. And you're insulated from meetings. I love it. I love contracting. Joe says, where do I find yesterday's YouTube? It's not up yet. I'm trying to upload 1.5 gigs from Thailand. Didn't work out too well. So I've got to render this one, and then it'll be another 1.5 gigs. And I just have to find a place to fast internet to upload. So Dan says, how do you find out who in HR is going to read your cover letter? It's generally going to be the person who also reads your resume. So in small companies, it's pretty easy to figure out. Small companies usually, they might not have an actual HR person. So if it's like smaller than 50 people, it might be the VP, CEO, that type of stuff. Just have to be a little persistent on the LinkedIn stuff. So RS asks, on Meetup, did you say? It's on our YouTube channel, routergods. So Lewis says, the only thing on contracting has to say is health coverage is rough, especially if you're covering the whole family. Now, see, the whole Obamacare thing made contracting actually a lot more appealing because with being a contractor before Obamacare, you had to apply for insurance, and if you had a pre-existing condition, you weren't going to get insurance. I have a pre-existing condition, and no, this is not going to work. So with Obamacare, if you do open enrollment, they have to enroll you. So in that sense, it's okay. The costs, you're gonna have to buy healthcare anyways as a contractor. So that definitely changed the game a little bit. But that's also why, as a contractor, per hour, you should almost always be getting paid more per hour, significantly, to help you cover the lack of unemployment, the lack of healthcare benefits, that type of stuff.